Hello everybody, Maven here, and the Shards of Galanor got a huge buff, so they increased the amount of super energy you get from throwing knife kills, and supposedly it also stacks with hands-on, but I just could not justify making a video on the Shards of Galanor because of the even bigger buff they gave to Ophidius Faith. However, when it comes to the other Solar Hunter Super Golden Gun, we got the Celestial Nighthawk on the other hand, and this thing got a buff as well. So now precision kills will grant you additional super energy depending on the tier of enemy killed. So I wanted to do a full build breakdown for this today and see how fast we can get our super and figure out what is the most optimal weapon to pair with this exotic to get the most bang for our buck and get the most super energy. So let's get to it. Don't forget to drop a like because it helps out a ton, and I hope you enjoy. So present day update on Celestial Nighthawk, because that intro was recorded last week. Celestial Nighthawk is now meta, and I'm sure you've seen other YouTubers clips on it. It's insane right now, and it's one of the reasons Hunter is seeing a huge rise in usage this season. Celestial Nighthawk might just be the best burst damage super in the game. There are tons of clips circulating of people just insta-killing raid bosses with 6 Celestial Nighthawks. And some of you may know, but As the Cross actually did a great DPS testing video on it, and I encourage you to go check it out. I'll link it down below in the description, but I'm going to give a big spoiler warning because I'm about to share a screenshot from that video in 3, 2, 1. So Celestial Nighthawk didn't absolutely do the most damage, but for the amount of damage it did, it's the most versatile. Pyro Gale is the strongest, but it's not the best against airborne and mobile bosses. Dawn Chorus is strong, but it takes a while to use, plus you lose out on running well. Star Eater Scale's Blade Barrage ends up ahead of the Celestial Goldie, but sometimes the projectiles annoyingly whiff or track other targets, especially against skinnier bosses. Celestial Nighthawk definitely wins out of everything. It's one shot anywhere, anytime, doesn't matter which boss it is, every enemy in the game has a crit. It's just the best burst damage super in the game right now, hands down. So I wanted to do this demonstration against Carl, but then this happened. So yeah, we're gonna need a bigger target. So I went to Carl's bigger brother Charles, got Radiant, hit him with the tractor, and we chunk him for well over half his health, and it's an easy cleanup from there. It's just ridiculous. Now for a comparison, we're going to hit him with the Falling Star Thunder Crash, of course with Tractor Cannon, and it does half his health, but not quite the amount that the Celestial Goldie did. Just nothing stands up to Celestial Nighthawk right now. So the update the Celestial Nighthawk got this season is that it supposedly does 25% more damage, but the other function is that Precision Final Blows grant super energy. So what is the best weapon to pair with it? Well, if you have enough XP to get the artifact mod Rays of Precision, I would recommend just using the Sunshot because of how ridiculous this combo is for Solar in general this season. It may not be the best for super gains, but it's just generally the best in terms of power level. However, when it comes to super energy alone, I'm just going to cut to the chase and tell you nothing comes close to the Bad Juju. This thing was built for super energy. It gives you more super energy based on the strength of String of Curses. String of Curses stacks up to 5 times. It's kind of like Swashbuckler or Adrenaline Junkie, but unfortunately there's no ways to grant 5 stacks immediately. So I know the title of this video says you can get a Goldie every 30 seconds with this build, but this clip here is just a proof of concept that you can get your super in under 20 seconds if the ad density is high enough. As a matter of fact, we get 2 Goldies in 20 seconds or less back to back in this clip, but I would say 30 seconds is more the average. You can see how fast the super energy racks up as you get stacks of String Curses, even though I missed a ton of precision kills. I always like to use Breakneck for examples that require high ad density, and there are certainly countless places in the game with this amount of ad density, so it's not completely unreasonable to say this is realistic, but you be the judge. So another thing people might be curious about are weapons with the perk Thresh. This is a Final Blows grant additional super energy. Is it good? Is it worth it? Well, I tested it out in the Conflux, and from my experience with it, I can tell you it's not worth it. Thresh needs a huge buff. Yes, I know I missed a bunch of precision kills, but I even had a better take where I got mostly precision kills, but my recording glitched out. Even then, it left a lot to be desired. I would not recommend a Thresh weapon for this build. I was hoping to get my super on time as I approached Carl, but I got it shortly after reaching him. And I did test the Bad Juju in the Conflux, and I did get my super before reaching Carl, but I cut that clip out of the video because it felt redundant, like I would be milking watch time, and that's not the kind of YouTuber I am. So moving on to the next weapon to test, the Wish Ender. So to understand this one, you gotta understand how damaging targets generate super energy, and fusion rifles are the best with that. As you can see here, as we use a fusion against Carl, we get a nice chunk of super energy for each burst, for each bolt connecting, which is why we're going to want to pair this build with a rapid fire fusion. Now the reason we are trying the Wish Under is because it shoots 3 arrows, and each one individually generates the regular amount of super energy that an arrow from any other bow would, therefore generating 3 times as much super energy per shot. And you can see that it doesn't look like it generates a whole lot, but it definitely adds up a lot in tougher content like GMs. To test this one, I went to the Hydroponics Delta and came across a fatal flaw. If you shoot an enemy in the crit with the Wish Under, only 1 of the 3 arrows will count as a crit. So if the critical arrow doesn't pick up the kill and the body shot arrows will, it messes with the Celestial Nighthawk perk. But I would still highly recommend using the Wish Under anyway for Master and GM content, because it is the best primary weapon in the game for that kind of content, especially when barrier champions are present. You may not get as much super energy for precision kills, but like I showed at Carl, you still farm a ton of super energy just for the 3 arrow volleys connecting with the targets. Now on to the next weapon, the Divinity. Yes, your eyes are not deceiving you, the Divinity. Now, why the Divinity, you might ask? Well, think about it. It makes perfect sense. Nighthawk wants you to get crits. Divinity always hits crits. I stayed in the Hydroponics Delta where the ads are 5 times tankier than the Nessus ads because they died too quick before the div cage came up. So when you apply sustained damage to a target, that div bubble will appear and it will always result in a critical kill. You can even build into it and pair it with the slug shotgun in the top slot, and I did that with the Heritage and hot swap to it after the div bubble appeared for some juicy burst damage. And you can also use the weighted throwing knife with the div cage for some good damage, but unfortunately it doesn't act as a critical kill for some weird reason. Div overall wasn't that impressive to me. Also makes you have to run reserves and special finisher, which is just another factor that would deduct some ease of use from the Nighthawk build. So therefore, Bad Juju is easily my top pick for most kinds of content, Wish Under for tougher content, and Sunshot if you have the Raise the Precision artifact mod, which I do not yet because I don't have the XP, and I wish I could have showed that off in the video. And now let's break down the rest of the build. So for the subclass here, we got On Your Mark to get that bonus reload speed, and then we got Knock 'em Down to get infinite throwing knives because they're refunded when we get Radiant. We get Radiant via Ember of Torches, and we can extend that Radiant and Restoration from the healing grenades forever with Ember of Empyrean, and we get a greater duration with Ember of Solace. And then there's Ember of Singeing to quickly get our class ability back when we hit our targets with our knives, but the one interchangeable slot here is Ember of Combustion. So for this slot here, you can run whatever you like. It all comes down to your preference. I prefer Ember of Combustion so my golden gun causes a really big ignition. There's a lot of other solid things that you can run though, it's really up to you. So for the weapon choices here, I'd highly recommend running a rapid fire fusion because of, what I showed at Carl. Hitting him with the fusion generates a lot of super energy. If you're using the Sunshot, just use Riptide in the top slot. You can also use Iterative Loop or whatever other rapid fire fusion you got. And for my heavy slot, I got the Cataphract for DPS, Eager Edge for movement, Rocket if somebody's using Galley, and Cataclysmic if it's a precision boss. So on to our mod setup here, there's one main thing we're trying to do, and that is make orbs via Reaper, Heavy-handed and kinetic weapon surge, scoop up the orbs of powerful attraction by dodging, and we're using this armor charge on triple kinetic weapon surge with a copy of time dilation to try to have that constant 22% damage buff for our Bad Juju. Pair that with String of Curses ×5, which should be a 33% damage buff, and then Radiant from our subclass, which is another 25% damage buff. And also this season, Pulse Rifles got a 12.5% damage buff. You add all these things together and the Bad Juju absolutely shreds. And for the rest of the mods, we just got various resists. We got Impact Induction and Focusing Strike for ability energy on knife hits, which we want to use our knife whenever possible to get Radiant and proc heavy-handed. And we got Dynamo for super energy when we dodge near targets. And then Heavy Ammo Finder, which is essential to run whenever you're using a weapon that has lead from gold. Now onto the stat breakdown. Since it is PvE, you're going to want to invest 100 in Resilience as your top priority. Then after that, invest into Tier 7 Intellect, but do not go beyond that. It is a super spam build. And for those who don't know why not to invest past Tier 7, I always reference this video I made on doing a full breakdown about how stats work in Destiny 2. So if you want to know why not to invest past Tier 7 of Intellect, you should check out that video. I'll link it in the card up above. And then after that, I dumped the rest into a split between mobility and discipline. You don't really have to worry about recovery or strength because we just use our Gambler's Dodge to get our knives back. Now on to the wrap up as I show off the Bad Juju clip from Hydroponics Delta, and straight away you can see how it blows everything else out of the water in terms of super gains. We managed to actually get 3 supers by the end of this clip, each one taking about 30 seconds or less. It's insane. I sincerely thought Bad Juju would be a pea shooter before my testing, but I was shocked at how hard it melted through ads. With the triple surge, radiant string of curses, and the pulse buff, it slaps. And I've always wanted Bad Juju to be able to mow down ads like this, and now it finally can, and it's well deserved after how difficult the catalyst was to obtain. You new players have it easy. You get the catalyst through random chance. Back in the day, you had to complete a ton of tedious triumphs to obtain the catalyst. I'm still kind of salty that they're just handing it out now after how hard I worked for it before. Anyways, as usual, I'll leave a dim loadout link to this build down below in the description and the pinned comment if you'd like to give it a try. And if you got any buddies who are hunter mains, I'd appreciate if you share the video with them. I'm sure they find it enjoyable. And if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate if you drop a like and a comment, because interacting with the video in different types of ways like that really helps out the algorithm. So if you clicked on something, it really helps. And if you are new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you here. And with that, I'll catch you in the next video. See you later.